Hi everyone, my name is Sam, and today I'm pleased to moderate this session on Move, or I should say, the Sui Move dialect. So, pretty honored to have you, Adenivi. How are you today?
Doing great. Moderate as only one person. It's easy.
Yeah, it is. Like before asking you a little bit more about your background, I'm actually curious to know more about the crowd here. Who among you guys is a developer? Just one? Don't be shy. Just 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Cool. Who has dabbled with Solidity or Move in the past? Okay, interesting. So, yeah, could you tell us a little bit more about your background before we dive into the intricacies of Sui, where it's been produced?
Sure. My name's Adenivi Abiodun. I'm co-founder of Mysten Labs. I'm also the chief product officer. Mysten Labs is a technology company. We're the creators of a protocol called Sui. A bit of background about Mysten and how the team came about. We are 5 founders. Evan Chung is an ACM Computer Science winner. He won an ACM Computer Science Award for writing a lot of the software that actually powers your iPhones, a compiler that runs the stuff on most of the devices we use today. Sam Blackshear is the inventor of the Move language. He's our CTO. George Denizes is a world-renowned distributed systems expert. Kostas Charkias, who actually ran a lot of the crypto we did at Facebook. And myself, I was the lead product manager on a lot of the research and development we did for the Libra project. The Libra project was at Facebook, so we all came from Facebook. We were the inventors of a lot of the technology that powered the Libra blockchain. And when we left Facebook, our goal was to build a new global scalable computer. My background, software engineer, electronic engineer by trade. Found out about Bitcoin in 2012, was mining Bitcoin very early when people didn't even know it existed. Built a few companies in the crypto space, and I went over to Oracle, VMware, and Facebook to run their respective blockchain projects.
All right, pretty cool. At a high level, could you give us like the specs that make Sui stand out from a technical standpoint and what it enables people to do?
Yeah, I'm sure people say the same mantra all the time: highly scalable, high TPS, high availability, blah, 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 right? Like, that gets very, very boring. What we care about more than anything at Mysten when we set out to build Sui was really the idea of composability was something we cared about intrinsically. One, to say, as a developer, if you build a game today or I build an app, today it costs 1 cent to play the game. Next week it's $5 because the gas fees goes up. That is ridiculous. That is not a design for any business to build on. Separately, the fact that most people can't store assets on chain. They store a link to some file on IPFS or Google or wherever it may be, but all you have on a blockchain is just a hash. That again seems ridiculous. It's not the promise of what blockchain offers. So when we set out to build Sui, we were unshackled from a lot of the restrictions we had at Facebook in building really a global scale computer. So Sui is an object-based blockchain. The unit compute on Sui is strongly typed Move objects. What that means is people in Web 2 who are accustomed to writing code with object-centric approach in their minds will come over to Sui and feel very much at home. So a lot of the things you do in a normal object-oriented program, you'll be able to do directly with Sui. Sui is also very, very secure. We designed it with a lot of the safety things that you just would not get with Solidity. For example, there isn't the idea of dynamic dispatch, which means you can have a lot of bugs in your code that lead to a lot of the hacks that we've seen today, and we'll continually see more hacks with EVM-based chains because of the number of bugs that you have with dynamic dispatch. Separately as well, Sui doesn't have a maximum theoretical throughput. We've designed it to scale beyond a single computer. So as validators add more machines, the TPS of Sui increases. So because of that, TPS or block space is an infinite resource, not a finite resource. Therefore, gas in Sui does not go up because the price of Sui goes up or down. It's actually very, very flat.
Yeah, could you bounce back on that object-centric element that you have in Sui and eventually put it in perspective with systems that people are more familiar with, like the account model in Solidity, like with the EVM?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Blockchains typically have different ideas about this. Some blockchains are UTXO-based, like Bitcoin. Some blockchains are account-based, like Ethereum. So Sui takes a different approach where it is object-based. Every object in Sui has fields, metadata associated with it. And one of those fields is the owner field. So ownership is baked in at the base of Sui. You do not need to write a smart contract or write interfaces to define what ownership really is. So there's less code to write as a developer, and there's also less opportunity to have bugs. So that object-based model is something that's natural to anyone building complex hierarchical data structures, which means you can actually model more of the real world than what you might be able to do with limited, with languages that kind of restrict you to using interfaces.
And so you kind of like, to make some kind of parallel with the Rust programming language, you take that boring concept that we've had with Rust and you kind of like re-implement it within Sui to offer better security guarantees too, right?
Yes. So one thing from Sui, when we set out to build Move at Facebook, one thing Sam did with the team is we looked at Solidity, we looked at Rust, we looked at even Bitcoin bytecode, we looked at, across a whole spectrum of different programming languages, and most of them were not ideal for building, smart contracts. So what we did is we actually borrowed a lot of the benefits from Rust, i.e. the borrow checker from Rust, and some of the semantics of ownership that you have intrinsically in Rust. And we implemented that with Move. Benefit of that is, it's a language that people will feel more at home with. You get the benefits of Rust, but also it is those languages like Rust are not specific enough for smart contract development, and do not give you some of the benefits that you might want as a smart contract developer. So what we did is we added all the elements around object orientation regarding to whether you have an owned object or a shared object. All the things you're going to want as a smart contract developer related to actual mutation of assets, and everything you need really when it comes to the functional verification that you want to do when it comes to your smart contracts as well. So if you want to have an additional layer of security, you can actually functionally verify your smart contract as well.
So you get that object orientation, that memory safety, and all the good stuff from Rust. And I believe that it's a language that a lot of, we probably have some systems engineer in the crowd, and the learning curve when you're trying to switch from Rust to Move, or I should say Sui Move, isn't that steep, right?
Yeah, if you're trying to move from Rust to Move, it's actually not that hard. It's very easy. In fact, I'd argue if you know C# or any object-oriented programming language, you're going to learn Sui Move relatively quickly. I do think there'll be a bit of a learning curve if you're coming from an EVM world, writing in Solidity, to Move, just because it behaves more like a traditional programming language, right, than Solidity in that sense. So there are certain paradigms, for example, interfaces that Sui Move just doesn't have. We believe in a world where code is law, interfaces are a crime. Interfaces just introduce a lot of opportunity for attacks, and we think actually it's a spell of how very inflexible a language actually is. So you can use generics or generic types in Move and get the same benefits.
All right, so I'm John Doe, and I understand that you're designing that blockchain in order to alleviate the risks that are inherent to smart contracts that we design in, let's say, previous monolithic design or status quo blockchains. So, so that an accident doesn't happen when I build my business logic on chain and I don't end up having to close doors because the stuff is broken. Okay, but still, if I am building with Sui, I have to go through audits. So I'd be curious to know about the state of the auditing market for Sui Move, and also like the other guarantees and tools that you provide in order for people to ship safe contracts. I understand that you have a move prover. I personally am a bit skeptical about formal verification, but that's still something that can help you in your whole contract design process. So yeah, like I'm that random person who's willing to build on Sui. What's the flow looking like when I am actually going for an audit and everything? I'm curious to know about the landscape.
So the top auditors already are working with Sui Move, AuditSec, and some that you might already know. So there is a vibrant auditing market out there for Sui Move today. The argument we'll make is because things like ownership are inherent as a base in the language, there's a lot less code, a lot less boiler code to write with Sui Move. So the typical checks you'd have to put in a Solidity smart contract, you don't really have to do with SweMove. So less code. I think we've done comparisons with code written in Solana, written in SweMove, and written in Solidity, and SweMove is way less verbose than all those languages. So I think less code is actually a good thing, less opportunity for bugs, and so on and so forth. And you touched on the Move checker. These are the things that we're investing time in, including others in the Move ecosystem, to make it really much more easier to do your own verification as well. We're also doing a lot of work now in AI to really improve the developer journey, whether it's code annotation, whether it's examples of more optimized code that you can insert in certain areas, or even investing in ways in which you can learn as a developer a lot faster, or at least trying to translate some code from a traditional programming language over to SweMove. Within, developer efficiency is one of the biggest areas of investment that we can continually make progress in.
Cool. And can we foresee a future where you actually expand the compatibility range of Sui, like the blockchain, so that it supports other languages?
I mean, look, we've invested a lot of time and effort into SweMove. I mean, the reason why we decided not to use EVM at Facebook is because, imagine we're trying to launch a global blockchain for the world, and you go to an auditor, you go to a regulator, and then you can't give guarantees around the security of the code. So we made a concerted effort back then to go hard and build something that we think would actually solve the security-based problems. We actually believe one of the biggest impediments to crypto adoption is actually the ability for developers to pick up and write code very, very quickly, and without crazy knowledge about the underlying infrastructure. So as a traditional Web2 developer, you should be able to pick up SweMove and not make as many errors as you would with other languages. So I would never say never, but I don't imagine a world where Sui will be compatible with EVM. I mean, bridges are there if people want to bridge assets from other chains. People are already bridging assets from other chains today onto Sui and vice versa. But ultimately, we think it's really a story about our narrative is really more about what we're solving for consumers. We think the composability you get out of the box with SweMove is too important. The safety and security you get online from the platform is just something you don't want to give up on. And quite frankly, I mean, if I had to do a comparison, one department in Facebook, for example, has more developers than EVM developers in the world, right? There's a massive world out there of developers that have not got into Web3 that we have to activate. And the more we invest into evangelizing Web3 to a broader audience, the better it is, the more users we can bring in.
All right. Could you list us a few use cases that are really specific to that we could have with SweMove, like leveraging mutable objects or certain logics that could be implemented on top of the chain that are non-trivial and really take advantage of this system that you've designed? Yeah.
So one of the things we've pitched to a lot of companies is the idea of dynamic objects. Right now, with traditional blockchains, state is very expensive. Block space is an expensive commodity. So you tend to do many things off-chain, which is great for some use cases, but there's some use cases where ownership matters and the history of an asset really matters. And you want to add additional benefits for having attributes for an object. So in Sui, you can build assets that are dynamic in nature. So if you have a sword or you have a car in a game, you can build the hierarchical structure of a car with the many moving parts that you can swap in and out. We've done that with an example with Sui Friends or Cappies that exist in the ecosystem today, where you can essentially construct assets dynamically on-chain with very, very low gas fees. Now, in gaming, that's very important because games aren't really always static items. You want to up-level an asset over time. Separately, we've invested a lot in ZK. Sui actually supports ZK proofs today. One of the technologies we're going to be announcing soon that's going to be live on mainnet is ZK login. It's the idea that we think wallets are inherently broken in Web3 anyway. We think what actually matters, if you want to onboard 1 billion people, they need to be able to use the existing identities that exist today. So with Sui, it will be the only chain where you could take your Facebook account, your Google account, any account that supports Web3 off, you can log in and you can basically create a Sui account with that Web2 account today. And that means you don't need to use a wallet. You can log into any number of wallets, and you have exactly the same balance across the board. And the great thing about that is neither a custodial, non-custodial model. The user, the Google will be unaware of what you're doing with your assets. Neither can they steal your funds. The wallet itself that you may log in through is unable to steal your funds as well. So we think reducing that barrier, and then you add on what we call sponsored transactions or gas stations in SWI, where a user can transact on the chain, but never be aware of gas because it's paid for by a different account. So you marry the idea of logging in with traditional Web 2 accounts, and you marry sponsored transactions, you now have really seamless Web 2 experiences. Now, what we're going for with SWI is mass adoption. We want you to be able to email NFTs to your friend. Like, why can't I email a coupon to a friend or email a token to a friend? You'll be able to do that directly on SWI. I can send that email, and only the account or the cookie of someone with a Google account matching my description will be able to unlock those assets. So we think that's what it takes to really onboard the next billion users. I think right now we've tailored very, very much to a very small audience, namely, I'd say early adopters, and it's great to get the excitement in the ecosystem, but I think the next cycle for crypto needs a ton more users, and that's where we're focused.
Yeah, that's kind of like your own approach to account abstraction. Even though it is not account abstraction, it kind of offers similar benefits. So you have you have ZK login, which is for people who are familiar with like more of the Ethereum space. That's kind of like semaphore to prove the inclusion of something in a bigger set. And you have like these guarantees, but I think it's a snark ceremony that powers that.
Yes. So we're running a ZK we're running a ZK ceremony starting today actually. So many people will receive an email, they'll be able to participate in the ceremony, and the full support for ZK. I mean, our thesis on ZK tech is it's great for privacy. It's actually great for improving consumer experience. We don't have the scale issue where we're trying to compress state. We actually have a blockchain that already can do over 300,000 TPS, and you can scale it by adding more workers. What we're using ZK for is to improve consumer experience, making it easy for people to onboard into Web3 and really hide away and abstract away the complexity of the chain. When I go to a website tonight, I'm trying to Google for something, I don't think this is running on AWS, I don't think it's running on a particular server. I just know I'm having an experience, and I think that's where the tech needs to go for it to be adopted.
Okay, and what is like Mysten's and the Swiss Foundation approach to open source software, maintaining core component of the infrastructure and involving the community into further developing the existing assets that you have in your system? And what kind of support can we also get from the foundation or Mysten Labs when we're looking to build on top of SUI?
Sure thing. So one thing that's going on right now, there's a liquid staking hackathon where 35 million SWI is going to be given to 3 protocols that win for various categories to bootstrap liquidity into their protocols. We have something called a SIP process, which is a SWI improvement protocol or SWI improvement process where you could submit changes or improvements that you want to the protocol that you can implement. We also have a grant process as well, so people building novel ideas in SWI can apply for grants at the SWI Foundation. At Mysten Labs itself, our focus right now is really onboarding major partners. I don't think people know, but some of the largest gaming studios in Korea are actually building on SWI already. We have over 50 games coming onto SWI, and these are fun games. These aren't like, very, techie Web3 games. These are games that people can play and have a ton of fun. It's an area we've indexed a lot on because we think that's where naturalistically, I mean, my kid is 10. He plays Roblox. He's always buying Roblox with my card if I'm not in the room. But that world is already accustomed to ownership of assets, and we think that world can be augmented with the technology that we're building today. So we're helping some of these large companies onboard into SWI, build core technology that differentiates them, and also really build more engaging gameplay.
And in regards to DeFi, like on-chain order books and different DeFi primitives implemented on top of the chain, what can we already find on SWI at the moment, or what's coming up next? Let's say I want to build something that sits on top of a perpetual protocol. Yep. Could you give us like some kind of overview of the DeFi space and what's coming up? Yeah,
so as people may not know, SWI's been live for only 4 months, and in that time we had the most amount of transaction in a single day of any blockchain in history. I can't remember what day that was. I think it was like 3 weeks ago. So we're already scaling. We already had 100% uptime. And we're building DeFi out. We have something on Sui called DeepBook. It's a crankless club, central limit order book that I think 8 protocols already built on top of. So it's a shared pool resource that all builders who are trying to build DeFi protocols can tap into for liquidity as they bootstrap their own protocol. At the same time, for folks who are building or extending the functionality of DeepBook, they can receive grants for the improvements that they make as well. So it's a fully open source project. Sui has contributors outside of Mysten, and our hope over time is the number of contributors to Sui exceed our contributions as Mysten Labs.
Okay, and I always like to have some objective conversations. And I would like to know from you, Adenivi, what are some of the limitations or things that you would like to see improved on the SwiMove stack at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work we've got to do on dev tooling. That's always when you build any platform, the tooling to make it easy for people to onboard is always where your investment seems to lag, but is always the most critical space. So we have a team that's focusing specifically on dev tools to improve that, and also, you know, there are grant programs out there for those who are building really interesting tools in the space. I think a few people have built some GBT-based tools as well in the ecosystem and received grants for it. So dev tooling, I think, is one of the biggest areas I want to keep on investing in. I think from an onboarding perspective, we've done a fantastic job with ZK login. I think that solves a lot of the problems the largest companies we've spoken to have in onboarding their users without worrying about the barrier of wallets, which we think is the biggest impediment. But yeah, if there's anything to improve, it's dev tools, in my view.
I do believe that there's a Korean validator, which I like, called DSRV, that's working on an ID, I believe, for Sui. That's actually pretty used, right?
Oh, it's one of the top used IDs, yeah. Good work.
Okay. Okay, like, are there some next milestones that you have, like, on Sui's roadmap that you'd like to share with us?
So we have, I mentioned that we have about 50 games already coming onto the Sui blockchain. A lot of these games are also AAA titles. So expect to see a lot more users onto Sui in the ecosystem very, very soon. We have an ongoing on-chain activity called Sui Quests. It's interesting. We started this off as a way to give visibility into apps in our ecosystem. Let me even tell you what quests are. We have an NFT in Sui for fun called Bull Shark and Narwhal. And if you have a Bull Shark and Narwhal, you're able to participate in certain activities in our ecosystem. Namely, if you deposit into DeFi or you participate in certain games, you can receive a reward if you participate at the top level. And what that has actually grown into is a great way for apps in our ecosystem to gain notoriety or at least get their first set of users. And we're going to keep expanding into that program. There's going to be more and more quests over the year as we grow. And our goal is to keep seeding the ecosystem with a ton of useful applications and a lot of engaged users who are very tied to the protocols that they support. So that's what we've been doing.
And I believe that there are also initiatives if people want to connect and engage with the broader Sui ecosystem all around the world. You have some builder houses.
Yeah. So we've been running builder houses actually prior to mainnet. Although we've been live only 4 months of mainnet, we're running builder houses, I believe, 4 months prior to mainnet. So we have a builder house. We actually had a builder house in Korea a couple of months back. That's why we didn't do another one here. We have a builder house in Singapore. The application's available online. So if you want to attend, please apply. I think there's a ton of interest there. We have on a Sui.io website. There's a ton of info on the global builder houses that we're doing at the Sui Foundation. Reach out. I mean, I'm going to be here throughout most of KBW. We'd love to talk to builders, talk to businesses who are building or thinking about building in Web3, share some of our battle scars and stories that we have in building the space and see how we can be helpful. I think that's what we have to do.
All good. Any closing remarks, extra remarks to the Korean community?
Korea is a market that I think most people may not be aware of, but we had been, I mean, I was in Korea 5 times last year. Absolutely blown away with the amount of talent and the foresight that the companies here have and the builders have in not just gaming, but DeFi as well. I think they tend to be way more forward focused than most of the markets that we've seen. Hence why we've hired a decent amount of people in Korea, including solutions engineers. We have our APAC lead actually based here in Seoul. We work with a ton of companies out there in Korea who've been building games in SWE even before mainnet. So we cannot wait to see the amount of titles coming out of Korean studios that are going to hit the market very, very soon. So yeah, I say this is a great market to invest in. It's a great market to actually partner with a number of companies with, and we like to continually increase that.
Cool. I think that wraps up that small panel. Thank you everyone for being here, listening to us, and yeah, I'll see you soon.
Thank you all.